Hello, my name is Peter. This section is called Setting Learning Objectives for an Online Class. I'm going to introduce you to a little tool here called a sticky. These are sticky notes that you can share on the screen to just communicate in words, in writing at the same time as speaking. It helps for if students aren't paying attention or if they are asked to leave the screen and they need a reminder of what they're doing. You guys have been listening for about an hour now, so it would be helpful at this point just to add this tool for you. So by the end of this short section, you'll be able to create effective and differentiated learning objectives for an online class. Just shift that to the side. So a bit of fun just to start. Here we have a image from the film Lord of the Rings as they set out on their journey, and Sam is asking Mr. Frodo, what exactly would you say the learning objective is here? So if you have any ideas, please put them in the chat box. Okay, and so the learning objective they were given, they learned a lot of things along the way, was just how to destroy the One Ring. Just a little bit of fun just to make you thinking about what objectives are. Let's think about what a learning objective is. Here's an example you might see quite often on the learning objective is the present simple, and it's page 14 in the book. In my opinion, this is not a clear learning objective. It just tells me what they did that day. It doesn't think about certain things that we need to think of for a learning objective. A nice definition, I would say, for a learning objective is goals that should be achieved by a student at the end of the lesson or of the course if it's a few lessons, and the knowledge and skills that we want our students to learn from the lesson or course. Basically, what can your students do after a lesson that they could not do before the lesson? A nice framework for writing learning objectives is called the ABCD of writing learning objectives. The A is audience. Think about who you are teaching. What level are they? What learning styles they have. The B, behavior. What action do you want them to do? And for this, you would use Bloom's taxonomy verbs, which is a side point I'll cover in a second. C, the content. What is the subject of the lesson? What's the learning point? Is it vocabulary? Is it grammar? Or is it a language skill? And D, the degree. How much of this learning objective do you want them to achieve? How fast, the speed, the accuracy, the quality. Now this is on the thing, but I just wanted to tell you for this particular graphic, I made it using something called Canva.com. Canva.com. So, looking at a learning objective, the ABCD, look at this. It's a physical learning objective, it's not language, but Year 10 girls will be able to run 100 meters in 20 seconds. Year 10 girls is the audience. Run is the behavior, the B. Content is the 100 meters, that's how much we want them to do it. And 20 seconds, the degree, the speed of what we want them to do. So think of the ABCDs when we're writing learning objectives. So when you're writing a learning objective for a language class, here's an example. Level 1 students will be able to write 4 sentences about their daily routines using the present simple on a social media post. Level 1 students is the audience. Write is the behavior I want them to do. 4 sentences is the degree, of what I want them to do, and present simple is the content. This is the language content. So Comparing that to what we had earlier, which was just present simple, we compare this here, we can see there's a bit more detail into it. It might take a little bit of time to get used to writing learning objectives like this, but it doesn't take much time to actually write them. You need to think what you want your students to do. There's reasons for this, especially with online learning. So looking back at behavior, I said use Bloom's taxonomy. Well, this would be a whole other presentation and section that you might need, but take a look at Bloom's taxonomy. I'll put a link on the website so you can watch a video and read a little about it, but use words more than just do or understand. Try to think of better action verbs that students need to do that fit the different cognitive levels of their learning. Another important point for online learning, general learning in language classrooms, is writing sub-objectives, but it comes into effect in an online classroom. You need to split your students into what everyone must know, what most students must know, and what some students must know. Everyone must know the main focus of the lesson. How does it link to the assessment? All students will be able to write about their daily routine, this example I gave you a minute ago. But also think of other objectives, what most students would know to increase their language fluency, to show some variety. Most students will be able to use different verbs in each sentence. In this first one, they might be able to just use the same verb again and again, but try to get them to use different verbs. And then think about those students that might want to learn a bit more. They find language a bit easy. They may be a bit high for that level, but you could set them activities related to this task that challenge them. They need to have differentiated targets. So some students will be able to use time markers or adverbs of frequency in 2 sentences. Again, this is all on the website, but it's something you consider when you're writing your learning objectives. Now, using this is for general language learning, but think about how this would adapt for online learning. Well, as we'll cover in other parts of the sections, you need to look at micro learning objectives. There's reasons for this. Your students will have different attention spans in an online classroom. They will need to change the tool that they're using. So set micro learning objectives, set these differentiated targets, the sub-objectives, so that they have something to learn. You might want to merge sessions together, so set different objectives for those different sections in the day. Remember to assess the learning. In online learning, it can get quite heavy on the teacher telling students and teachers helping students, but allow them chance to actually show that they've learnt the language. What tool will you use for them to show this? We'll cover tools again, but make sure you put that in your learning objectives. What are they going to do? In my learning objective, it was write. They will write at some point. Ask the students. There's an American bank, I think it's the Standard Chartered Bank, and they have a policy of, at the end of every team meeting, they send out an anonymous poll on the meeting and did you enjoy the meeting and what did you learn from the meeting, and they rank the meetings out of 10. And at the end of the year, the managers of all the departments get told if their staff like their meetings or not. And it's quite, you would think it would be quite embarrassing, but it actually gives them tools to think, they didn't actually get anything from our meetings. Maybe I could have just achieved it with an email. Why did I waste everyone's time? In a language classroom, ask the students, did they learn anything? Did they enjoy what you used? So it would give you some data on, did they learn? Do you need to revise it? Did they enjoy the tool? So you could use that tool and again and again. Ask the students. It's a great thing we have in online learning. Adapt the verb for online learning. So using Bloom's taxonomy, think about what verbs would relate only to online learning. For example, post. In normal classrooms, you would say write sentences, but in an online classroom, they could post sentences on a social media site. So think about what could be used for online learning. And always think about 21st century learning skills. These students we have now, They're going to learn in a different way. They're going to work in a different way than the rest of us when we were growing up. So think about what learning skills they will need. Think about critical thinking. Think about leadership. Think about communication. Think of these when you're setting certainly your sub-objectives for online learning. Here's some useful advice. Think about who this learning objective is for. Is the learning objective for you? Is it your students? Is it your managers? It's actually for all three, but make sure that you think about when you're writing it, who is actually going to see it. A student won't be able to understand meta language that maybe your managers would. When do you show the learning objectives? At the start of the lesson? I actually put my learning objective on a sticky. This is a good way to say what was going on. I didn't simplify it, but you could share it with the students. You should show it them at the start. You could bring it up at the end and ask them, do you think you learnt this? How do you assess the learning? Well, again, you should signpost a lesson so that they know when they're at the assessment point, and this is a chance for them to show what they're doing and ask for support if they need. What verbs should you avoid? Bloom's taxonomy has a list of helpful verbs, but it doesn't have verbs that you shouldn't use. I find that using verbs like know and understand, my students will know, it's difficult to assess that. You could say increase, you could say create, you could say use, but you shouldn't put them in for the learning objective at the start. Think about more detailed verbs to use. Okay, just to finish this section, I'm going to do a little Quizlet. Now, Quizlet is a useful tool for flashcards. Now, there was a few terms I used in this section, and you could go to the Quizlet just to have a look at these terms and test yourself on them. I just want you to go to this link. I'll put it in the chat box now. But go to this link. First, click on the flashcards like this, just to see a few of the things I mentioned in the section. And then just click on the Learn section just to test yourself. I'm going to give you 3 minutes just to do that. So go to, I'm just going to put in this sticky, go to the link in the chat box, look at the flashcards, and then try the Learn activity. And we'll come back together in 3 minutes. It's not a test, there's no interaction on this, but it's a good chance for you to try it. So I'm just going to put some gentle music on for 3 minutes, and you would go to that section. So here is the Quizlet. Here are the flashcards. And here we'll learn, so just test through them. What action do you want them to do? Use Bloom's taxonomy. This is behavior. The action is the behavior. The knowledge and skills, this is what a learning objective is. How much do we want them to achieve? Oh, well, this is asking me to type that this is degree. What's the subject of the lesson? This is the content. The subject was present simple in my example. What are you teaching? This is my audience. Sorry, who are you teaching? This is my audience. Consider the different abilities. What, all, most, it would be nice for some. These are your sub-objectives. Setting micro-objectives. This is for online classes. So these were the advice I gave for setting for online classes. Okay,